waters in the Caribbean are preparing for Tropical Storm Sandy, which is expected to develop into a hurricane by the time it makes landfall in Jamaica later today. With the eye of the storm around 300 kilometers south of the capital, Kingston, there were sustained winds recorded of 95 kilometers per hour. Authorities in Jamaica and Cuba issued hurricane warnings, telling residents to expect heavy rain and winds of up to 130 kilometers per hour.
She's just coming on vacation. She ain't gonna stay long. So I'm just making sure I'm ready, just in case she changed her mind. She wanna stay for a couple of weeks. So everybody get ready, because Sandy ain't playing.
Try to stock up on supplies, try to batten up the house, make sure that my family knows what to do in case the hurricane hits.
Tropical Storm Sandy is heading towards the southern coast of Jamaica and is expected to continue its northward track, passing over Cuba and the Bahamas before turning into the Atlantic. Meteorologists expect up to half a meter of water to fall in certain parts of eastern Cuba. Residents have been clearing undergrowth from riverbanks to help the rainfall flow away.
Today was the day that Sandy became a hurricane and made its way into Jamaica. It made landfall at 3 p.m. on the 24th of October 2012. And here's a look at the impact of that storm. It didn't cause a lot of problems in Jamaica, but it did cause a huge amount of flooding in Haiti, and that led to 104 fatalities. Let's take a look. 104 people killed there in Haiti. They are very, very susceptible to flooding. This is really the beginning of the hurricane hunters' flights. And what you're looking at here is all of the tracks of those flights extending from south of Cuba and Jamaica right up into the southeast part of the U.S. coast and all the way up into New York. So all told, it was 24 flights, 140 flight hours, and they dropped 312 dropsondes. These are these devices that they drop through the storm to get very precise readings, and that is fed into the computer models and gives us a much better idea of what the storm is going to do.
First, let's begin with what happened on Wednesday afternoon as Hurricane Sandy made landfall in Jamaica, claiming the life of 74-year-old Cleveland Scott. The police say he was killed after a boulder rolled onto his house in Bedward Garden in eastern St. Andrew, injuring him. Sandy reached Category 1 strength before barreling across the eastern parishes. But hours before the hurricane actually hit the island, heavy rains and huge waves threatened homes and lives. Senior Gleaner editor Arthur Hall found residents on edge when he visited Sandy Gully in the vicinity of Sandy Park near Leganese, St. Andrew.
That is the retaining wall of the Sandy Park Gully. This is where the house was, where 5 persons lost their life. Right now it appears that wall is going to break away and that house could go as soon as possible. The gully is flowing heavily and it is going to get worse the closer Sandy gets to Kingston, Jamaica. Right now it's a clear and present danger. Sandy Park residents are in trouble, and if Sandy black barriers across the island, it could be trouble for residents that live here.
And so it was throughout Wednesday. High waves, swollen rivers, torn roadways, flooded streets, and fallen trees and light poles. As night fell, 70% of the country was without electricity. The parishes of Portland, St. Mary, St. Anne, St. Thomas, St. James, Westmoreland, and Hanover were the most affected. One day later, a resident from Lawrence Tavern in St. Andrew, Edward Taylor, could barely look on as part of his house floated away in the gully.
We come out earlier from 2 o'clock bells, and rain and breeze and so I'm starting to watch it, tree them and so on. I wave and watch it, tear them all them trees, tear them and when we go back in and lay down and say, we catch a sleep around 9 hours at our approach. Nearly here when this collapse down, and everything start tear down for me and I'm there on the bed. Right, and I see things that come out, I just curl up and hold up so. Right, and everything all me have a bag beside me, gone down the gully. Everything because through is a security work we do. So we should have gone and work today.
The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPM, reported that close to 1,500 people were in shelters across the country. Hours after a 2-day island-wide curfew was lifted, the police reimposed the measure to prevent looting. As damage assessment continued, the National Works Agency estimated that 40% of the nation's roads were impassable. But by Friday, There was some good news. The Jamaica Public Service said electricity had been restored to about 60% of the island. But residents in eastern parishes like St. Thomas, Portland and St. Mary will have to wait a bit longer. The Light and Power Company says critical elements of the transmission system in those areas had been damaged. It's expected they will be without electricity throughout the weekend. And most schools were spared the wrath of Sandy. So by Friday, students were attending classes in Clarendon, St. James, St. Elizabeth, Hanover, Westmoreland, St. Catherine and Manchester. But acting on the advice of the ODPEM, the Education Ministry ordered schools closed in the parishes of Kingston, St. Andrews, St. Thomas, Portland, St. Mary, St. Anne and Trelawney. They will reopen on Monday, October 29. It was especially bad at the Swallowfield Primary and Junior High. The government said Sandy caused severe damage to infrastructure and crops. The Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller said Sandy couldn't have come at a worst possible time. In her words, I hope that the international agencies, as well as the International Monetary Fund, will recognize the problem that we now have as a result of the storm. Now, the government has vowed to find the funds to assist the areas worst hit by the storm.